Okay, and here we are fully in the 1695 turn. The events rolled up. Nothing too exciting here. Largely because we're at the end of the period and nothing rolled off the map. Oh, I forgot to roll one. So far we've just had 2 revolts and a destabilization. Let me take this last one. 53, 1, 2, 3, that's a 17. Let's see what we picked up here. The Grand Pensioner. I have no idea what this is. Cannot take place if there's a personal union between Holland and England in effect. In that case, mark it off and do not consider it as played. Well, that's what happens. We had no event there. That would have brought DeWitt into play as a 979 with a reign length, but a penalty to living and a possible dynastic crisis. This isn't happening. And some slight benefits here. An additional fleet placement and basic forces increased by a fleet. But he's not here. Anyway, what we did have though, Turkish dynasty fell, another lousy ruler, or Turkish ruler died, another lousy ruler. But very, very fittingly, the Spaniards had a dynastic crisis, as though the current Habsburg allied emperor or king has actually been displaced in favor of some other noble of Europe, based on the French victory. And nothing in the event causes this, but I think it's really a cute interpretation of what just happened, because, well, historically, you could say that the Bourbon Spanish king and the side of the Bourbon king lost the War of Spanish Succession by game terms, because the effects are all, England gets Gibraltar and Asiento and this, that, and the other. All the countries which took advantages took them from Spain. But the Spanish monarchy was allowed to persist as a Bourbon. Well, in this case, everything had been knocked out. It almost made more sense. This seemed a more extreme victory in many ways than perhaps what actually occurred. France felt like they were largely winning, even if they were being invaded throughout the entire war, in a way that I don't think it feels like the Allied forces were continuously winning, although they were never really losing the War of Spanish Succession historically. Anyway, it's nice on my side to be able to make these little, backstories up and such. I used to do it all the time in empires of the Middle Ages, where, I'd be rolling up rulers and I'd be naming them and keeping track of all kind of stuff like that. And here, well, it's nice to have some kind of storyline that tries to match what happened in the game. That doesn't often happen where something magical kind of pops into place like this. Usually the storyline is pretty much fixed according to the events as they're written. Alright, I guess we go on to the administrative stuff. I want to do an economic recount, but I'm so bad at it. I remember the last time I recounted Turkey in this game. I had to count it like 5 times, and I still don't know if I got it right or not. Having to count France 5 times is beyond my ability. It's just, I used to be better at that kind of thing. Right now, I have absolutely no patience to count all the provinces of France and try to figure out how much value they really have. So I'm just going to play through and hope that I'm not too far off. But yeah, it's kind of a problematic situation when you cannot evaluate the countries to their full value, and I'd have the same problem with Empires in Arms, although this is Obviously, a smaller provinces and harder to keep track of, but I just can't do it, I don't think. Part of the problem is my damn calculators. Maybe before I used to add chunks of the points into a calculator to remember it. Now I do that and I can't trust the answer I'm getting. Okay, very briefly for diplomacy, the Russians have declared war on the steppes. Kind of a hard choice because of this revolt in Tula, but they can give that time. They'd like to, and they may be able to resolve that as well, but they'd like to take the steppes out and gain something at this point. They're really in a bad situation overall. They also had the only successful diplomatic action. The English tried some with Scotland. Most people are out of money here. They got the Habsburgs in a military alliance. This is a very, very limited military alliance. It allows basically a single stack to move into one area, but they're laying their claim down on the Habsburgs and seeing that the Habsburgs are the country that they want as their ally against their two main enemies right now. Their main enemy is Poland and perhaps Turkey. Those are the countries they're most worried about, and the Habsburgs sit in a very, very useful location for this. Now, this is liable to cause some real issues because the Habsburgs are one of the big pawns in the world right now, and of course, whatever money they spent on them might be wasted because the Dutch could just pack up their bags and go join the Habsburgs. Of course, the Habsburgs might be interested in an anti-Turkish alliance at least. They're probably not too interested against Poland. They're probably not terribly interested against Turkey either. They've gotten most of what they want, but we'll see. But anyway, even if the Dutch don't go with the Habsburgs, other people are very interested in the Habsburgs. The 7 Years' War is coming up. We have to see where that's going to all fall, etc. This kind of commits Russia into that, and Russia's not a vibrant country. It's nowhere near as big as it should be. It should be holding, a good hunk of Poland already at this point. It should be considering, if not all, well, it shouldn't be in the Crimea yet, but it should be preparing for fighting the Crimea. Instead, they're just this little tiny rump that they were originally, plus Kazan, which they got back from Poland. And of course, their extra European areas. One quickie, I forgot to point out, the English regained the Atlantic Trade Center. It was only a one-turn thing for the Dutch. And they've got to kind of decide. Right now, the Mediterranean was actually their goal, and so they're probably going to try to pad that and try to help maintain that. They'd like to take the Atlantic, but their chance of taking it away this turn is very slim. The English have decent money. We see the economies, though, coming back. 550 for the English, 477 for the Dutch, 441 for the French. The others kind of falling behind, with actually Turkey the only one above 200. The Spanish really badly hurt, not just by the territorial concessions they had to make, and the pillaging, but also these revolts that are going on, etc. And a depression in the prices is also affecting things. We're seeing some of the things, tobacco and sugar, have gone down to where it's not clearly always worthwhile to trade a slave for one of them. It had been for a while, but now the markets have kind of corrected that, and slaves are, worth... Maybe it's that the slaves have gone up in value, to tell you the truth. They were around 3, and now they're up to 5. And these others are still kicking around there, so it's actually not a depression, but an increase in the cost of slaves. We're beginning to see people, France and England, moving into that vacuum that the large French slave trading posts before had abandoned. We'll see who ends up in the Congo there, but yeah. After the economic phase, we start to see how do I put this? A certain despair from many different directions. Countries like England still have enough money. He built up an additional army, planning on sending it to Jamaica to free it up. Not a bad position to be in. France, certainly not a bad position, although they have kind of this, I gotta get my army together and in place for later, but, there's a lot of time to repair with the stability where it is. Even the Dutch, thinking maybe they could overtake the English for the Atlantic trade. They have the Mediterranean sort of sealed up for this turn when it's most important for them. They may be abandoning the Netherlands after this turn. They're not sure. They have to look at the victory conditions and make their decision. But if they don't, then maybe this was a bad move. As it is, they failed to overtake the English, so they're not going to get the trade center this time. They're about a point or two behind at this point. But, you know, they're able to expand their trading posts, expand their colonies even, still feeling kind of vibrant. Spain's destitute. Spain can't build an army. They have to build a partial army that they can command with their leaders. They have to build another one of those. They have to build a navy just in order to try to clear this up. They have no way to get there. Those are just they're lost colonies for who knows how long. There's no national government which can take their place. So they're not going to become independent countries as some things might, like, say, Ireland. But they've got a serious problem there. Speaking of Ireland, England still has to deal with that revolt as well. But then if we look, Turkey's got sort of the opposite problem. They've got plenty of money. They really do. And nothing to spend it on. They can't colonize. They attempted one. You know, you can do competitions. But competitions are very short-ranged. Basically, competitions kind of make sense, and maybe the Dutch and English should have considered this. They kind of make sense when you're fighting over a trade area just to get that boost, to get the extra cash to keep going. So they could have done a competition against Venice here. Why is the Venetian Navy D so weak? Because the Turks actually gained a navy there if they didn't have to, and they did not have to fight the Venetians. So actually the Turks have a monopoly here, which I have to account for because they didn't have to do a competition. So now they can do a non-mandatory competition from now on to try to suppress Venice. That cuts into the income that they make from it, but they'll still get the victory points for it. It's kind of a nice thing. And if Venice were their problem in terms of trade center, they'd have no issue whatsoever. As it stands, though, they kind of can fight against the Dutch Mediterranean trade, and they may sink that and deny the Dutch their points for this period. Of course, the Dutch have a navy that they could launch if they didn't spend all their money. I don't know how much they spent. They spent a lot on expanding because they're not very wealthy right now. But it definitely puts a kind of interesting light on things because Spain has plenty they could do. They have their army to build up. They have colonization, trade fleets, all kind of stuff to set up. They want to clear their revolt. They don't have the cash. Turkey, their last opponent, has tons of cash. Nothing to do with it. They don't want to build up their army. They don't want to build up their tech because it's going to cost them if they don't consolidate their army first. So it's kind of, just this weird dichotomy here. Anyway, this is going to be, I think, a fairly uninteresting turn for the most part. There's not a lot going on. Just the war against the steppes and these little revolts and stuff. We'll see. But I don't see really coming in with every blow to blow. It's just not that interesting for this turn. Very briefly, end of round 2. The Russians have taken the steppes out. They were driven back in the first round. They took it. English, trouble here. Cleaning up in Ireland. They don't have a leader for the Caribbean. Elsewhere, everyone's pretty much taken one action, say the Dutch, to get their fleet in, get, $16 off of moving that netted them a total of $6, to tell you the truth, which may not even be worth sailing, the Smyrna fleet. But now we see the Turks have put things out, and now the Dutch have to respond and start cleaning up the privateers. Which is, it's one of the problems with being in the Mediterranean, right? If you're not Turkey, you've got to face these. And that was a lot of rounds this turn, 8 rounds. Good news for the English. They managed to discover Kamchatka and clear the Irish problem completely. No movement over here in Haiti, but, they maybe could commit another army there. That's the best they can do. And if they do that, they've got to figure out, they've got to really worry because they have two A leaders. They can't really commit that much force down there with the leaders they have, so they got a problem with that. Anyway, certainly a detachment could go and add another one. Right now they've been rolling at -1s. The Dutch lost a big hunk of their navy patrolling against the pirates. And that's a painful situation. What they may find is, well, see, they could make a deal with the Turks, but the Turks want to knock the Dutch down so that they can get the Mediterranean Trade Center. Now, right now, I think the Dutch are going to pull out. I don't think they can maintain the one thing that they've got a lead in, which is the Med. They just can't afford to keep it. They're going to get the victory points this turn, and they got to look to, Austria is my better choice right now. Anyway, we'll do the end of turn mechanics, and this is also the end of the period, so we'll be getting the big victory points and everything there. Entering the second to last period here, 1700. This is, it's funny because usually at this point in the game, and I don't know if it's going to happen here, I'm just so fatigued that somehow it just sort of blurs and runs through very quickly, even though it's a very exciting period. Really, the entire game spans such an exciting period of European history. In terms of, it's a popular era in which a lot's studied. Yes, maybe it's not as popular as, say, the Napoleonic slice or whatever, but there's so many big events happening in this game, and they're big events that most other games aren't, that very few war games actually touched upon in the time period that this was made. Nowadays, there's a lot more. But anyway, we've got a new commodity on the market, cotton. We're going to have a lot, oh man, the leaders. These are all French leaders. I don't know what to do with them. I mean, they're just overflowed. This is the French naval leader stack. There's like 2 detachments there, I think. The English are getting big people here, though, too. Like Marlborough is showing up. Overkirk. Trying to remember what else. There was something that I said, oh, this is bad news for someone, and I don't remember who or what it was. Yeah, I don't remember. Turks are getting naval leaders now, or Russians are getting naval leaders now. It's definitely an interesting situation. So I already have included the victory points that the countries got for the end of the period in their totals. So England, for example, got 120 points for this period, bringing them to 673. They're showing quite well here. Actually, the scariest of all may have been 120 is a lot, but Spain, they doubled their value, pulling in 80 points from their special conditions here. But England got the port, which was a big 75 points. They got Portugal another 45. The colonies, they had everything good going for them. France Spain got 80 points. And they got that off of mainly the Habsburg remaining emperor. The world's against that, but it doesn't matter that the Habsburgs were separated from them. They still get all these points, and that's really a lifesaver for them. It's kind of a gimme. If they're not doing well, they're going to get a big hunk of points there, because who's going to combine to defeat them for that? The other things, though, well, they got the Italian, no, they failed in all the allies. They really didn't get anything else here, except Transylvania annexed. And in fact, maybe they should be 15 points higher. I don't know where that, oh no, there's the -10 for the Burgundian provinces that they didn't hold. Okay. The next one, France only pulled 25 in. Let's see what they did. They're not sole producer of furs. They didn't get the Asiento because they got defeated in terms of losing the slave market or the slave source that they had that would have allowed that. They needed to keep that, and they failed. Total monopoly and CTZ, they got that. That's 15 points. Mediterranean trade, they failed. No English on the continent, they succeeded, but they couldn't add. They didn't get a penalty for it. It would have been the no Holy Emperor, rolling Emperor. Okay, so let's look at the next one here. Portugal, Russia pulled a -10 in, but they didn't do too badly for the turn, having won a war, an easy war. They didn't get their colony stretch. They didn't get anything, basically. No port on the Black Sea. The Khanates weren't taken out, and they took a penalty for Smolensk. Yeah, we knew this was going to happen. Turkey got 40. Seems like they should be doing better. They seem very resurgent, but the biggie they got was no Christians on the Black Sea. They got penalized for Vienna. And then finally the Dutch pulled 45, which is not bad at all, but I don't know how long they can keep it. They had the Protestant minor allies, the Mediterranean trade. They didn't have the Atlantic trade or the French, driving the French away from their border, but they took a penalty because they're non-Dutch in Asia. Yeah, good luck preventing that from happening. This is kind of the last turn the Dutch can expect to get decent points, though. Now the only question is the game balanced better than it used to be with the Risto events? Because the old events, the Dutch didn't look pleasing, but the 10 points a turn that they pull in for their trade fleets, they can probably maintain that. They're not going to be able to get the big trade centers anymore, but they can probably keep getting 10 points a turn for the fleets as long as they don't fight too hard for the trade centers. And in fact, they might be able to boost that because they've got things like this that nobody else can reach. And then there's sort of not a lot of competition here with the English. Both they and the English can gain lots of points as long as they leave the English alone in the Atlantic Trade Center. If they put all their effort into the Mediterranean, I don't think they're going to be able to get those 10 points a turn, though. Question is, can the Habsburgs score more? And that I have to look at the victory point conditions for the next period to tell you. We'll do that next turn. But yeah, that's the end of the period. I got to erase those numbers because we've got them there. The French in the lead at 843, English at 673, Venice at 585, and then we drop down Russia at 469. Still not bad, and actually Russia can gain a lot of points at this point in the game. So, you know, I've never seen them walk in not hosed by the events in terms of victory points. This game seems to still not allow Russia to be the Russia you want it to be. But whether Russia became the Russia you want it to be or not, it just couldn't make it in victory points. I've seen it do well at this stage in the game and later, and it's just they bled so many. In this game, I don't think they're bleeding as many, and I think the Risto events actually fixed at least the I can't win with Russia feeling. I still can't get Turkey. You know, I mean, Turkey got Egypt, but real late in the game. I've only seen them do that early maybe once or twice in, say, the 6 times I've played this whole thing. All right. Anyway, this one's going up. It's interesting. I'm a little excited. We'll see how things go because France is such a runaway leader right now. But England's got the ability to crank points if they can get their trade fleets out there and doing well. So maybe they're not so concerned with defeating France, but to tell you the truth, there's end-of-game victory points, and France is sitting on a lot of points here in the Netherlands and in Italy. England's probably willing to fall down to fight France here in a way that I've not seen it happen before. I've seen France win a game, but I've never seen them, you know, in this kind of position. It was maybe a strangled England that was the problem. I've seen really everyone except the Turks and the Russians pull off a victory. So there's nothing too exciting, but I've never seen the French do this well. And they're scary big right now. It's not a matter that, you know, someone else like England is just failing. It's a matter that they're really kind of frightening. But with all those leaders and with the powerful army, it's going to be hard to form a coalition, especially now that Spain is maybe more directed against Turkey. Spain knows they can't win. The Dutch actually know they can't win either, but they've got some serious interest in this stuff here. Of course, they may not be Dutch anymore. They may be Habsburgs, and maybe they have more interest in that area as Habsburgs as well. They should. They also may have interest in Italy. We'll see.